Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Completionist. For this episode, guys, I'm going to do an episode of a completionist point of view. And the topic that I'm going to talk about is a question that was originally asked by Michael B. the Game Genie, when I first started to entertain the idea of doing videos like these. Now, he asked this question when I was part of the Newfoundland Gamers podcast, when it was me, Michael B., and Keeb, the Joking Gamer, God bless his soul. And we used to have a guest. And, for the short amount of time I was on that podcast, we had some really excellent discussions. And the question that Michael B. asked me is that, he asked me, do gamers expect too much when it comes to finding rare and valuable video games for a good price? But I wanted to elaborate on that question a little bit more. And I got more inspiration to make a video like this when I watched a video done by Gamester81 when he talked about the fact that finding NES games isn't fun anymore. And the question that I wanted to address in this video is that, what are video game collectors truly entitled to? Now, you'd figure with a video like this and the games that you see before me, you'd figure, I talk about, some of the rarest and most valuable video games that I actually own, which are the games that you see before me, but that's simply not the case. One thing you need to understand is that I am very scared to make a video like this because I get the feeling that a lot of people may get offended by what I want to say about the video game collecting hobby. But I've watched a lot of people talk about this hobby for a very long time, and I have a mind frame towards it that is much different from everybody else. When we look at a lot of video game collectors on YouTube, what is the number one complaint that they often complain about when it comes to collecting video games? They often say that video games have now become way too expensive, and it's gotten to a point where it just isn't feasible, to collect anymore. And a lot of video game collectors mainly blame it on two factors. Those two factors are, they blame it on the resellers, who deliberately go to flea markets and garage sales and go to Craigslist and buy up every video game they can and try to sell it for as much of a profit as humanly possible. And the other thing that they actually blame it on is that they blame it on people like me. Now, if anyone is familiar with what some of my video game collecting rules are, is that I firmly believe in paying for a game for what it's truly worth. I, as a video game collector, I accept responsibility for what the market dictates. I go into this hobby with no sense of entitlement and no expectations. But the thing is that with me, I've been collecting video games for about over 10 years, which isn't really long, compared to a lot of other video game collectors out there who have been collecting for much longer. But one thing you gotta understand is that these games that you see before me, I don't collect these games because they are rare, or they are valuable, or that they could be worth a lot of money. I collect them because I actually want to play them. I consider myself a bit of a video game purist. I prefer to play games on their original hardware. And regardless of how rare or how valuable a game is, it's not going to stop me from eventually buying my own copy so I can play it. But the reason why that I believe that these games are so expensive is much different from what everyone else believes. The thing is that I think the reason why that the games that you see before me and many others are so expensive is that it is something that all of us have inadvertently done to this hobby. The thing is that I have done it, you have done it, anybody else who collects video games who watches this video has made this hobby an incredibly expensive hobby to maintain and to even enjoy. Now, the reason why I say this is that what are two words that easily describe all the games that you see before me. Those two words are rare and valuable. Now let me ask this question. What other word gets associated with the words rare and valuable? Money. I often use a saying that I'm sure some people have seen in my comments before, is that money often corrupts the things that we love the most. And I think this is especially true when it comes to this hobby. Anytime that any of us have ever used the terms rare or valuable to describe something, we are literally inviting the opportunity for the general public to basically take advantage of that. To think that all of a sudden that games that we bought, you know, back in the 1980s and 1990s now are suddenly worth something. Because the thing about money, and one thing that you need to understand, is that we all need it. You know, it's a necessary evil. You know, we all need it in order to, you know, maintain some semblance of a stable life for ourselves. And you can't really blame people, you know, if they see an opportunity, you know, to basically to make an extra dollar for themselves, to do whatever it takes to provide a stable life for themselves. And not only have they done it to video games, but they have done it for tons of other hobbies as well. They've done it for basically films, comic books, action figures, vinyl records, and anything along those lines. Because the thing is that, you know, while a lot of people may consider these games rare and valuable, I think a lot of people are, you know, missing the main point. You know, the majority of the games that, you know, you see before me, you know, they were literally released between 1990 and 1999. And during that time, between 1990 and 1999, I was between the ages of 10 to 19. So I was literally at an age in which, you know, I couldn't really buy video games. And one of the reasons why I wanted to pick up these titles for myself is that I wanted to have the childhood I wish I could have had, but I could never afford. Because one of the things that a lot of people are missing, and you know, I see people at flea markets and garage sales and Craigslist ads, go through Craigslist ads and, you know, get titles such as these. And one thing that, you know, that completely disappoints me is that they never talk about, you know, I heard this is a good game. I never hear that. The first thing you often hear people say, this is a rare game, this is a valuable game, this game is actually worth a lot of money. I'm a firm believer that, you know, games are meant to be played. And more importantly, games are meant to be beaten. And even in my case, games are meant to be completed. The thing is that, you know, a lot of these games that are deemed so rare and so valuable to other video game collectors, some collectors even keep them sealed. And I don't believe in keeping games sealed. I believe that games are meant to be played, and they're meant to be enjoyed. You know, basically, two incredibly rare games for PlayStation 1 are two of the best JRPGs you could ever play. And that's Suikoden 2, which is often referred to as the best Suikoden game in the entire Suikoden series. And you have Valkyrie Profile as well, which is an amazingly dark, depressing JRPG. But I often never hear people talk about that. You know, they always talk about, you know, it's worth a lot of money. But there are more important things about games than just the price that people think they can get for them. You know, if any of us were lucky enough, you know, to actually buy these games when they were first released, nobody was fixated on if this game was going to become rare or valuable 10 or 20 years down the road. We actually bought the game because we read an article in a magazine that piqued our interest, that actually said the game was good. But these days, a lot of people don't seem to be fixated on that, and that's what's truly unfortunate. Now the thing is that, and you know, even the NES games, you know, a lot of people are after Little Samson, but anytime I see people mention Little Samson, it's never about, you know, being one of the best underrated platforms on the NES. It's always about Little Samson's a $400 to $500 game. It's the same thing, you know, with Panic Restaurant, Bonk's Adventure, and Fire and Ice. And even though these games came out at the very late life of the NES, you know, these games are actually really excellent games. And that, you know, I don't believe a game's value should ever be measured by how rare or how valuable it is. A game's value is measured by how good the actual game is, how good it actually plays. It's, you know, another game, you know, is Project Justice. It's one of the most sought after titles, you know, on the Sega Dreamcast, and that's literally one of the best fighting games on that system. But I never hear people talk about that. It's always about, you know, how much it's worth. And the thing is that unfortunately, guys, we have all done this. You know, there used to be a time in which I used to describe my games as rare or valuable, but I simply refuse to use those terms anymore. Because I buy these games because they're actually enjoyable games. I don't care about how much they're worth or how rare they are. Because one thing, let me assure you, to anybody who watches this video, I'm subscribed to 115 channels out there. I do not like your channel based on what you own. Nor do I feel anybody should ever like my channel because of what I own. Because in essence, games are meant to be played. You're doing yourself a great disservice by just keeping a game on its shelf, afraid to take it out, afraid to play it just because you may lose some value on it. If I'm subscribed to your channel and I regularly comment on your videos, it's because I respect the person in front of the camera, and not because of the games you own. Because the thing is that even though there are so many games that are out of so many people's hands, we have all done this to this hobby. And nobody ever wants to admit that. Nobody ever wants to admit that, you know, that they are part of the problem. But unfortunately, we all are. So the thing is that, you know, we gotta stop describing things as rare and valuable, because people are always going to associate money with things that are rare and valuable. And that's what's truly unfortunate. And, you know, to those people that look at video games like these and, you know, think of the price tags that are involved, as disappointing as it is, I can't truly hold it against these people who look at these games as a way to make a profit for themselves or to make their life easier. Because one thing you need to understand is that one other thing that everybody, every single person is entitled to is every single person is entitled to success. You can't blame a person who has a family, that has a significant other, that basically that has people that they need to look after, you know, to use their video game collections or to use their hobbies, you know, as a means to provide financial security in their life. Look at the guy who sold the world's largest video game collection. I think he sold it for, what, $750,000? And he did that because he was in financial trouble. He needed to look after some very important people in his life. And ultimately, I can't hold it against people who look at this hobby as a way to profit. But the biggest thing that I want people to understand about this video is that games are meant to be played, and they're meant to be enjoyed. I don't care what you own, nor should you even care what I own. And you may believe, well, you know, it's easy for you to make a video like this because you own all these titles. But the harsh reality is that I don't own them all. Some of these games are from my very best friend, especially the NES games. And another thing that I just wanted to talk about is that if it's one thing, you know, I don't really understand about video game collectors, and you know, it really pains me to say this because I consider, you know, my best friend to be in this category. What's the reason? What's the purpose of owning every game for a particular system when about 30 to 40% of those games aren't even any good? They're not even worth the plastic and the paper they're printed on. Because horrible games, you know, need to be shunned or basically, but yet you have these people that, you know, that will buy them. And as much as it like disappoints me of people who go after full collections, it's like I said before, I can't hold them against it, because every individual person has their own reasons of, you know, why they're in this hobby. And as long as it makes them happy, then I can't stop them from that. You know, there are a lot of things, you know, in this hobby that I don't like, that I see people do all the time. But ultimately, I can't hold it against them. I can't tell you how many videos I've watched of people going to flea markets and garage sales, and I see people lie, cheat, steal, bully, manipulate, intimidate other people, you know, to get the games that they want. And it's gotten so bad that I've even heard stories of fist fights breaking out at garage sales and flea markets over retro video games of all things. Because the thing is that ultimately, guys, like, let me give you a harsh bit of reality. If you're someone and you think that your material objects are going to help give you financial security in your life, you are taking a big risk. Because nostalgia is a powerful feeling. But what happens when this hobby starts to crash, and all these rare and valuable games that you think that will provide financial security in your life suddenly lose all their value? Does that suddenly make your hobby a lot more meaningless? Because I don't buy games like these because they're rare and valuable. You know, I would have bought these games day one, the moment that they were released, because I believe that they're actually good games. But I think it's time, you know, for video game collectors to stop focusing on the rarity and stop focusing on the monetary value of these games and actually fixate on what actually makes these games desirable. And there are more important things than money, especially when it comes to this hobby. Because all these games, for the most part, are good games. They represent their genres well. And I think we've lost sight of that. This is a hard video for me to make, because I've had these thoughts about this hobby for a very long time. I don't believe in associating money with this hobby, or to treat games such as these as status symbols, because in essence they're just games. They're meant to be played, they're meant to be enjoyed. They're not meant just to sit on your shelf or put in some plastic seal collecting dust. They're actually meant to be played. And it goes back to what the original question is. What are video game collectors truly entitled to? And what I believe that they're truly entitled to is to play the games that you enjoy, that you want. I'm not interested in ever going after a full collection of any specific system. I go after the games that I wanted to play for a really long time, but I never had the money to afford. I wasn't an adult with a full-time job when the majority of these games were released. And you know, when your parents only bought you 2 video games a year, you had to be very picky about the games you wanted to play. And I think it's time we focus on how good these actual games are, and never about how much they're worth. You know, I hope at the end of watching this video, I hope you guys ultimately understand, you know, what I have to say. And whatever fallout, you know, comes from this video, I happily accept it. I know there are probably plenty of flaws in my argument that, you know, that you could poke a lot of holes at. But I firmly believe that regardless of a game's rarity, and regardless of a game's value, they are meant to be played and they are meant to be enjoyed, and we need to stop fixating on the monetary cost. I think it's far too late now, because now that the general public knows what gamers want, you know, I think the prices are going to stay high for a really long time. But you can't go into this hobby thinking that you're the only exception to the rule, because we all have to accept responsibility of what the market and what the hobby dictates. And the moment that we stop taking greed out of this hobby is the moment that more people will actually start to enjoy it. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this insightful little video about how I truly feel about this hobby. And as always, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best. Later.